Well, welcome back, Dominic. We're back for another episode of From Dom's Desk, which is a brand new show that we've put out, Dominic, to kind of look at the world through your view and through your lens, if you will, from a perspective of Invest Plus and everything that you do in commercial real estate, which is an incredible growth journey that you've had. So welcome to Dom's Desk, everyone who's watching. Thank you for watching. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and also share this with other people that are interested in commercial real estate or all things real estate, in fact. Dom, let me ask you this question. For today's show, I wanted to talk about growth. You know, one of the things we talk about, and one of your fundamental beliefs, I believe, and I know one of mine is, if you're not growing, you're probably dying. And that's really important. And when it comes to the world of commercial real estate, growth is very, very important. And growing with your tenants is also a very important thing. What makes you guys different? What makes your approach and your strategy different and unique as it relates to growing with your tenants?
Well, for a couple of things, JG, there's many ways a company can grow, especially when it comes to real estate. You find investors, you find a building, and you grow that way. But one of the things that are a little bit unique in terms of the skill set that exists here is we're really focused on our tenants. And focused in the sense of understanding what our tenants' needs are, what their future plans are, what the goals are. Because after all, really, it's the tenant that's the asset, not necessarily the building. And so when we talk about, assets under management, which is a way to, gauge the size of a company and all that, while that's the size of the portfolio that you have, really it's the tenants that are the assets behind those buildings that are probably most important. And so for us, where most of our focus has been and traditionally continues to be, is understanding anytime we're buying a new building, we want to know what that tenant is what their plans are in terms of growth, if they're a national, international company, because we know that there's likely going to be events and times where those companies in different cities or different parts of the country, that they're going to require or have some real estate needs, whether it be consolidating into another location, whether it's to move into a bigger location, so on and so forth. And so talking to our tenants about that has led to, a lot in part of our growth over the last couple of years.
So, Dom, you talk about, and I love that. I love that approach. And I think it says a lot about you as a CEO is, the tenants are the asset, not so much the buildings. I mean, the buildings, yes, are on the balance sheet, but really it's those tenants that drive those buildings. So let me ask you, how do you get to know your tenants? How do you guys build those relationships? Because, I know to a lot of, whether it's REITs or other people in commercial real estate, those tenants are just numbers on a spreadsheet, if you will. How do you guys get to know your tenants?
Well, I think it all starts with just sales experience. I started my career early in sales, and the first thing that they teach you is relationships, building relationships, understanding what your clients' goals are, what they're trying to achieve. Because if you make them successful, you're successful in just by virtue of helping them. And so when we're talking to our tenants, what we've in the conversation that we're talking to them, we've discovered that a lot of these companies, and even the multi-billion-dollar companies, surprisingly, when they're in a city where they need an office space, or they need an industrial space, whatever the case may be, start off from scratch with a local agent and saying, here's what we're looking for, here's what we need. And to my surprise, a lot of these companies also have a real estate team, but a lot of the responsibility that's put on the real estate team is also sort of transferred over to the agent. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it seems inefficient from the standpoint of always having to start over, explaining to the agent, we're looking for this, we're looking for that. And that agent may not necessarily have all of the tools in the history of some of the things that they've experienced or the tenant has experienced in the past in terms of their real estate needs to better position a product or a building that fits that client. And so our approach is, look, from our standpoint, we're still going to use those agents. We're going to use multiple agents. We don't get compensated on whether the buildings is in our possession or not. We're just looking for something that's a solution for the tenant. And so that's one of the big differences and the sort of the value proposition that we have to our tenants.
Interesting. Now, Dom, right now, you guys are most of your assets are in Western Canada. If you had a client, a great tenant who was in Western Canada, wanted to move a little bit more Central Canada or Eastern Canada, as in GTA, or maybe into Quebec, or whatever the case may be, are you guys expanding outside of just Western Canada, or does the client have to want to expand within Western Canada?
Yeah, our biggest asset base right now is in Western Canada, but we do have requests for assets outside of the Western Canada, particularly in Ontario. In fact, we're working already with a tenant that they need a space in the Waterloo region, and so we're not going to shy away from that because we already know the tenant. I mean, think about all the benefits of understanding a tenant and growing with the tenant. You already know the tenant, you know their ability to basically pay your bills, pay your rent, but also you can also standardize your terms and conditions, things like that. So that relationship is, you want to get it to a point where there's a question about real estate, or they have anything, and there's only one person in mind, and that's Invest Plus, and that's kind of where the goal is to have that mind share of our tenants to ask us first. Let us look after it and get back to you, because we already understand you, Mr. Tenant, and we already know what your requirements are. So to answer your question, yeah, no, we're not just focused in Western Canada, although the majority of our portfolio is here. If we have tenants who are wide across the country, we'll certainly look into that as well.
Well, I think you bring up a very interesting point, Dom, which is, and this really speaks to your strategy and your tactics and how you've grown an incredible business at Invest Plus, which is to really be of service to these tenants. And there's so many, as you know, landlords and tenants who have kind of this adversarial relationship where they're against each other. In fact, it's clear to me that that's a very different approach. You have a very different approach, which is unique, which is to be of service to the tenants. And I think that just speaks volumes in terms of how much you guys have grown in the last couple of years, because it's clear that where you started at Invest Plus and where you are and where you're going has been an incredible growth journey in the last couple of years. Where do you see the future going given this tactic, Dom? Just last question, where do you see the future going in the next kind of 12 to 24 months?
I think, given the economic situation that we're in and where we're headed to, we've always thrived in economies that, are either struggling or where we find some great value. So we've been in Western Canada forever. And for a while there was a lot of questions about whether Western Canada would ever come back. And here we are. And so when we look over the last 2 to 3 years in terms of the acquisitions that we've done, it's really positioned us well. And so going into what potentially could be a downturn here in 2023, I think those will present some huge opportunities for us. So, but going back to also talking to our tenants, because that is part of our mandate in terms of growth, we're exploring every single option. We'll go to every single one of our tenants. And I think we've got upwards of 100 to 150 tenants that we'll talk to and talk about what are their real estate needs and having those conversations. Great opportunity to get to know them from a standpoint of understanding, okay, well, this, if the tenant is looking to grow, that's a good thing, right? Whether they end up, expanding and requiring more real estate needs, it gives you that opportunity to get to know the tenant, to know, this tenant is going to be here for a while. They're going to need your space. And even if they don't need your space, what a great opportunity to have that conversation.
Beautiful. Well, Dominic, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, JG. Take care.